You'd basically be becoming a franchise without any benefits of being a franchise as an operator.
I just don't know what percentage of the entire industry is the people who would be quite happy to be within a franchise kind of a setup and those who want to do their own thing in their own way.
Welcome to the Tourpreneur podcast. Travel industry veteran Shane Whaley will take you on a journey with fellow tourpreneurs, sharing their tips, ideas, insights, and success stories to inspire you to make your tour business the best it can be. And now, please welcome your host, Shane.
Suppliers beware. A threat lurks in tours and activities distribution. Not my words, but the words of GetYourGuide's co-founder and COO Tao Tao, who wrote a very interesting opinion piece in Phocuswire. Now, he basically attacks the acquisition of Bokun and FareHarbor by TripAdvisor and Booking as not being healthy for the ecosystem in our industry. He talks about things to consider if you are going to work with them, and he announces GetYourGuide preferred partners where they've teamed up with Rezdy and BookingKit. There is a lot in this article to take in. So I invited Peter Syme and Bainbridge onto the show for our first ever panel. I want to do more of these panels. And Alex Bainbridge founded Tour CMS, which was one of the original reservation systems. He led that business for over 10 years until its successful sale in October 2015. So he is extremely experienced when it comes to reservation systems and working with the different platforms. Peter Syme, many of you will know, especially if you have attended an Arrival event. He rarely holds back, outspoken, but he has a right to be because he's also very experienced in the travel industry. He is the founder of 1000milejourneys.com. He's looked after in excess of 100,000 adventure-seeking guests. He advises startups in the industry. He always has something thought-provoking to say, and I really urge you to go check out his LinkedIn or his social and read his articles. I will share those in the show notes, which you can find today at tourpreneur.com/panel1. Now, in this panel discussion, we obviously talk about Tao's article. We also talk about Get Your Guide originals because a listener did email me and say, hey, I think the bigger threat is what Get Your Guide are doing with their originals. So we discussed that. And we also talk a little bit more about brand loyalty. And Peter shares with us why he thinks Airbnb experiences have a bit of a head start on that. So there's a lot in this 45 minutes. I hope you enjoy it. It's the first panel we're running. I want to run more of these. And I do offer a right of reply. Get Your Guide, Tao. You're very welcome to come on the show and chat with us and share more about your thoughts in your opinion piece today. And that also goes to FareHarbor, Bokun. We're not a closed shop here. We try and be as independent as possible on Tourpreneur. You're very welcome to come on the show, and you can find my contact details at tourpreneur.com.
Did you know every weekday Shane curates the most interesting news articles in tours and activities and sends them out in a snappy daily digest? Grab your copy of the Tourpreneur Daily Briefing at www.tourpreneur.com.
Welcome to Tourpreneur, Alex and Peter. How are you?
Good afternoon. I'm all good.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic. Really interested to get your opinion on the article that Tao Tao wrote on Phocuswire today titled Suppliers Beware, a threat lurks in tours and activities distribution. And I'll just read very quickly from the article. So he's talking about 3 reasons why things are good right now. And he says dozens of options for managing availability, driving bookings, and scaling businesses are at operators' fingertips. This diversity is a sign of a booming space driven by healthy competition that's earning the trust of travelers around the world. But there is a growing threat to our segment's future, the loss of independence in reservation systems thanks to acquisitions by TripAdvisor and Booking Holdings. 2 such purchases last year turned 2 leading reservation systems, Bokun and FareHarbor, into fully OTA-owned entities. These vendors say they will prioritize the best interests of tour operators over those of their new owners, but I am skeptical. Tour operators usually rely on a wide range of distribution partners, and tour operators take on a huge risk by handing over all their data and distribution power to a single OTA. We at Get Your Guide don't think this is healthy for the ecosystem in the long term. Peter, what say you?
A bit slow to the party. I mean, it's pretty old news now, nearly a year since the acquisitions happened. And obviously there was a bit of a shock in the industry when it happened, but we maybe didn't see it coming. But in hindsight, when you look at the money involved in this sector and the growth rates, it was always going to happen. But hindsight's an easy thing. From a pure supplier point of view, as I'm on record that's saying at arrival in wherever it was, Las Vegas, from a supplier point of view, an operator point of view, having one of your main distributors and one of the global giants of technology, travel technology and distribution, owning your reservation system, which is the beating heart of an operator's business, is strategically crazy. And it's just not something you would do if you understand business. Now, from a pure operator's perspective, I agree with this article. It's not something you should do. But from an OTA perspective, I can see where GetYourGuide's coming from. They're trying to compete with two people that have strategic advantages over them on the cost of acquisition of customers, where even though they've just raised 500 million or whatever it is, that can be burned acquiring customers. So they have strategic issues that are way beyond us small operators. And this is a big boys battle that's going on for the digital landscape of tours and activities. And tour operators don't really pay attention at what's going on. And that's probably to our detriment in the long run.
And Alex, you've been in the trenches on the opposite side, on the front lines. You founded Tour CMS. So how are you reading this morning?
I think what Tao Tao has said makes a lot of sense. But I also think that Tao Tao is playing a slightly different game to what he wrote in his article. He wants the industry to stay as it currently is structured because he is working on projects to change that structure. So he'd quite like all of these other companies to really just lock in and ossify around the existing structure. Not because he necessarily believes in that structure, but because that gives him more lead time, to build his new model, which is that where you have a GetYourGuided brand, a GetYourGuided technology layer, and a GetYourGuide branded supplier or tour guide. Now, if you go that new model, you don't need reservation systems. So, of course, his preference would be to keep all the existing reservation systems happily chugging along, not doing anything particularly innovative and just trading, because that's a perfect outcome for GetYourGuide, because it buys them another 24 months on their bigger industry-changing project. But that's if you believe that he's playing a slightly canny game. If you think he's fighting on behalf of suppliers and tour operators, fantastic. Then this is, what he's doing, what he's announced is a great thing. But I'll come on to it in a bit more detail in a minute. But actually, there's a number of different points within what he's outlined where you go, hang on a minute, that hasn't really been very well thought through.
Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. So firstly, the first one is res systems need to have exits. Okay, so the founders of reservation systems need to have exits, and if they have an exit, that means you need to have a buyer. So what GetYourGuide has just said is that they're effectively not going to buy anyone. That's fine, but they're the company in the sector who's got the most cash right now. So now you've got GetYourGuide saying that they won't buy. And I think that's a relatively fair assumption from what he said. He's saying, I want to work with all the providers. So what he's saying there is, okay, we won't buy. And so now if you're thinking about investing into a reservation system, you're like, okay, well, what actually is the exit here? Are we just going to be a piece of software that just gets improved over time and everyone's happy and pays their $50 a month or whatever it ends up being, or percentage, but never makes it into a very large company? Or are the reservation systems, are they able to take larger funding rounds? Now, what's interesting about that is that if you think about the innovators within the sector, not all the innovators, but many of the innovators are still stuck running res systems and have been running the same reservation system for 10 years, and they haven't got their exits. So there's a whole pile of founders who need their exits at some point in the coming couple of years. And if GetYourGuide is signaling that they're not a buyer, then that causes issues. Because if you don't have exits, you don't get new entrants. That's point one. I think that they're kind of interesting. But the second thing is they're also doing a bit of a divide and conquer strategy. So at the moment, and whether or not you think this is good or bad, this is what happened. So that's how it is. Now, if you want to do well on TripAdvisor, you have to have a Bokun account. If you want to do well on Booking, you have to have a FareHarbor account. And now, if you want to do well on GetYourGuide, or you want 40% savings, because that's what the GetYourGuide public website says. It says 40% savings if you are on Rezdy or BookingKit. You now have to have a Rezdy or BookingKit account. So now, if you are a small supplier, you now need at least 3 accounts: Bokun, FareHarbor, and either Rezdy or BookingKit. And that just seems a slightly ridiculous situation for suppliers who were thinking that digitization is going to help, but now you're suddenly being fragmented. And so GetYourGuide is actually making the fragmentation worse, not making it better, but they're fragmenting the supplier systems. So that, again, is just something that GetYourGuide could have avoided by not giving a discount to Rezdy and BookingKit suppliers, but they chose to give a 40% saving. So if I was a small tour operator right now, I would be, let's go and put my tours onto Rezdy or BookingKit to get them onto GetYourGuide and pay 40% less, whatever it is, commission or whatever it was that they're going to charge. That's just fragmentation. And so I think that's a bit of an issue. So issue number 1 is GetYourGuide signaling they won't buy. Issue number 2 is they're extenuating the fragmentation of suppliers needing to have multiple accounts. If I was a channel manager right now, I'd be like, this is really good. It's creating a new opportunity for new technology. But it has to be a channel manager that sits underneath the reservation systems, not between the reservation systems and the OTAs, because GetYourGuide will only connect to Rezdy and BookingKit via the Rezdy and BookingKit API, not by a channel manager. So if you're a channel manager, you now have to actually flip which side of the reservation systems you're sat. And now you have to sit underneath the res systems rather than between the res systems and distributors. So again, GetYourGuide's just, giving everyone a 12, 18-month project for no real consumer benefit. So if you read the article on face value, you think, hey, this is really good. I love the fact that we're going back to the world where CEOs write blog posts announcing their strategies. We used to have that 10 years ago. Most of the CEOs of all the res systems used to blog, and now no one does it. No one does it at all. So it's great to have Tao Tao back writing blog posts, because it's just so much nicer to read it than just have a one-line press release.
Peter.
Well, it's, again, coming from obviously the operator's point of view, again, I'm on record as saying constantly the only strategic advantage operators have is if they maintain a direct relationship with the customer. That is their only advantage. I don't care what the product is. I don't care how unique they think they are. I don't care what technology they're using. All of that can be duplicated, replicated, and improved on at speed. The only strategic advantage any operator has in this landscape is their direct relationship with the customer. These big global technology and money games at scale are increasingly going to make it difficult for the operator to have direct relationships with the customer. What is the effect on that? The effect will be to maintain a decent amount of direct relationships. The cost of acquisition for an operator to gain it will go up, because you will be competing in the same space as people who are much better than you in the digital landscape from digital marketing point of view, and certainly equipped with more funds than you to outmarket you at every single corner. So the end game of this is operators' margins will be squeezed. There's another layer in the stack at the moment that will be squeezed, and that's the reservation systems margins. I do not know the books of the reservation systems. I don't know who's making money and who's not, but I strongly suspect some of them are not doing overly well, because the revenue that they're charging operators, in my opinion, isn't sustainable. It needs to be higher. And there's a price war now going on, because FareHarbor's more or less free. They load it all out to the consumer, pays for that. Booking's more or less free. And now GetYourGuide's coming in with 40% discounts on that. So these reservation systems are getting squeezed, which, again, at some point, this always goes to the bottom. The person that will end up paying for the next 24 to 36 months will be the operator. Eventually, long term, who pays? the customer, because at some point the operators have to react, to put the prices up across all the channels. Obviously, all these middle layers don't care because they're working on a percentage of a higher price is more money than a percentage of a lower price. But they do give this mixed message to the market that by doing comparisons on OTA, the customer gets a better deal. In the short term, I believe that's correct. But in the long term, I don't believe it's correct. I believe the customer ends up paying for all of these middle layers in the long run.
I will give you another good example about where pricing really hurts reservation systems. So I remember launching TourCMS a long, long time ago, and I had a stand at Travel Technology Europe, which is a London travel technology show. It's great. And someone came up to the stand who was from a competing reservation system, not tours and activities, but more of a sort of a classical system. And she came up to me very angry and said, I hope she's not listening to this podcast. Anyway, she came up to me and she said, I can't believe what you've done with TourCMS pricing. I've just invested £5 million, which is about $7 million. I've just invested £5 million into this technology platform, and you've come along and destroyed the price point. I'm like, well, yeah, but I've made it affordable for smaller companies. And she's like, oh, and I'm like, oh yeah, but so I made it affordable. But the secondary reason why I actually had kept the price very low was because I was trying to put off at the time VC-backed competitors. Because if I was getting traction at a low price, it would mean that others would not be able to get VC funding because they would look at the market price and go, that market price is not going to accept a VC level of injection. So I've played that game before of keeping the price low, but it killed me in the end because we ended up not having enough resources to do all the things we wanted to do. So, playing the low price game is tricky. Now, there were these 40% discounts for Rezdy and BookingKit suppliers. Fantastic. Now, if GetYourGuide open that partnership plan up to other reservation systems, will any of those companies who join in have to also take off that 40% discount? Well, you've just basically halved the market price of reservation system income, which is what Pete was just saying. Or do you recall that 40% offer in order to increase the number of reservation systems, in which case everyone's going, well, why on earth did you give that offer? That wasn't, you've only kept it there for 12 months. That wasn't a very good thing to do. So I expect that is that for the next couple of years. That is the offer, and that will be, they'll stick with it. Because I'm sure they would have gamed it all the way through, has worked out what happens if this happens, what happens if that happens. So we're on a squeeze. Reservation systems are going to be resourced less, which again is good for GetYourGuide because it locks in reservation systems to do what they currently do rather than what they need to be doing, which is innovating on this whole new industry structure that we all know is coming. And if the reservation systems don't have the resources, GetYourGuide with their development teams will get there first. It's a very straightforward game, this.
How do you think the people such as Olan at Treksoft, CEO of Treksoft, and the guys at Palacis and the other 148 or however many there are today, reservation providers are feeling this morning on this news? Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point attractions is going to split from tours and activities, and different reservation systems have got different makeups of attractions versus tours and activities bookings. Some are heavily focused on attractions, and some are heavily focused on tours and activities. Companies like the OTA level companies can start innovating with different tours and different experiences, but they really can't innovate at attractions much because attractions are branded things that are in a specific location and everyone goes, I'm going to the Eiffel Tower. It doesn't become GetYourGuide's Eiffel Tower. It is just the Eiffel Tower. Whereas a tour can very easily be rebranded in whatever brand it wants to do. So the innovation can happen in tours and activities. It can't really happen in attractions. So if I was an existing res system, I would be looking very deeply at my makeup of attractions versus tours and activities. And I would be thinking more about how I could do more attractions projects, because attractions projects cannot be altered by the retail layer companies.
Yeah, I asked that because Tao, what he's advocating is an independent ecosystem, but he's only got two providers that he's working with, right? So it's BookingKit and Rezdy. Now, in fairness, in the article, it says launching with those two. So I don't know if there are discussions with the others. But again, it's, that they're picking winners in the space. I would love to know, and Tao, if you're listening, this is an invite for you to come on the show and share it with us, what the criteria was for picking Rezdy and BookingKit? Two good companies, don't get me wrong, but I would love to know what their criteria was.
I think it might be which companies are willing to offer a cut of their fees. I mean, because that's a big chunk.
Absolutely.
The earth-shattering news for the CEOs of reservation systems isn't so much this article or Tao coming in with this. This is just another nail banged into their rapidly diminishing strategic runway. The real shock was a year ago when Bokun was purchased and FareHarbor was purchased. That then was the signal that they have to make strategic changes in their business. And from there, I have absolutely no doubt, certainly all the main ones, and I know there's 140 odds and growing, but certainly all the main ones will have, and their boards will have gamed out constantly various options. Obviously, the options of being purchased is rapidly diminishing, and it's probably just diminished some more. I would suspect mergers of reservation systems has to be looked at between some of them, depending on the financial makeup of the reservation system and who is funding it, be it VC funded or private funded. But there has to be some merging because there isn't a market at the current rates they're charging and going to have to charge going forward with this price war that just can't all survive. Therefore, there are strategic decisions that the boards of these reservation systems have to take. And as Alex alluded to earlier, you've got two things here. They have to survive, first of all, and then they have to innovate. You cannot innovate if you're fighting to survive. But they have to survive, and then they need to start innovating, because they ain't going to just survive as reservation systems anymore. And we know there's 70 or 80% of the world's operators not on reservation systems yet. So we know there is a pipeline of business to come, but it's not enough. And there's people above them with bigger resources, more people, lots of clever people who are innovating faster because they're in a position to do it. And therefore, that's going to cause them strategic issues going forward. And the thing that's going to kill them the most or hurt them the most is the speed of change that's going to happen. People think they've got 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and really that is months rather than years now.
I just totally agree with you, Pete. I mean, I think my mindset when I was the CEO of Tour CMS was that we were a supplier reservation system. People would ask us, can we go to your suppliers directly? I go, well, there's no such thing as going directly, because we are the supplier reservation system. We are the master data set of what that supplier does. And that is the mindset that I had. And as a result of that, it wouldn't have been a very obvious thing to do to sell to a big retail brand, GetYourGuide or anyone. It just wouldn't have been an obvious thing to do. So I was slightly surprised when FareHarbor and Bokun sold, because I was like, well, that's what it just didn't go with how I was feeling in terms of, I was there to help suppliers, and you don't help suppliers by selling to a retailer. That's just not helping your suppliers. So it just wasn't on the list of things you could do. What was on the list was selling to things like, selling to a GDS, or someone slightly independent who, like a technology services company or whatever it was, or a technology company who had technology and was doing a different type of product like airlines or, hotels or something like that, because they understood what it meant to be a supplier reservation system. And I use that word, supplier reservation system. And that's why I was, this is 12 months old news now, but that's why I was a bit surprised by that, because I was like, well, that didn't even come up in the equation of things to do, because it just didn't make sense to us.
I think 250 million changes people's opinions.
I understand that. And I don't think Bokun was in a position necessarily to dictate what was happening to them. So I think that made sense to them too. So that's great. Good luck to them both.
Want to connect with other tourpreneurs? Then join our Facebook group at tourpreneur.com/Facebook.
Let's put ourselves in the shoes of a tour operator today. Should they be worried that if they're not working with Rezdy and BookingKit, that they won't get promoted on the GetYourGuide platform? Do you think, reading this article today, that GetYourGuide might at some point turn around and say we won't take connectivity with FareHarbor and Bokun? I mean, what do you think the tour operator, how would you respond to this, for instance, Peter, if you were working with GetYourGuide, with taking your feed?
One of the challenges with this is because we cover such a wide fragmented industry, we're all different. There's multiple sectors within this who are all using the same technology and using the same distribution. I'm a niche within this sector. So obviously I pay attention and it runs through me. Do I want to run multiple reservation systems? Do I? Hell, I've got enough to be doing without running multiple reservation systems. But my advice to operators would be, see how complex this is getting, see how challenging this is getting, understand that there's a war going on way above your level between these companies, work out how much pain and effort you're going to have to play all of their games, or would that effort be more worth it doing a lot more about direct business for your independent business and stop relying so much on distribution? Now, that's easy to say if you're in a niche operation like I am, because I can take 90% of my business direct and give very little to the distributors. If you're in a bus tour operation in major cities around the world, it's not as easy. They have to go through distribution. So you can't generalize in this sector because the sector of tours and activities covers so many different operator styles and operator types that the right thing for me is not the right thing for another operation. If you're in the long tail and if you're in niche and you're not in volume, my advice would be focus more on what you can do with all the social channels that are available, with all the Google power that's available to drive business to yourself. And I'm not saying kill distribution, play with the distribution, but don't get sucked into thinking the distribution is your business going forward. Because if it is your business going forward, pain's coming. It's in the post. You may not have it today, but it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental question, if I was a tour operator, is who actually is designing the tours? And for this, I really am specifically talking about tour operators, not attractions, not necessarily experiences, not a few other sort of types of product. But tours, currently, the tour operator, the supplier, designs a tour and says, hey, this will make a great 2-hour bike ride. And then creates that product and then puts it onto a distributor and receives bookings for that as a product. But the future is slightly different. The future is the retail layer companies are designing the tour. A retailer will say, oh, here's a good idea for a 2-hour tour on a bike. And then they will send that to the operator or maybe one of a handful of operators who can deliver that as a service. And that is the big shift that's changing. And that requires a whole new layer of different types of technology, because we're no longer distributing product, but we're receiving bookings for services. And the best way of explaining that is to think about Uber. Uber, when you phone an Uber cab, you pick up your phone, you open the app, you call the car to your location, you get in the car, and the driver is branded as Uber. Everything in that interaction was Uber branded, but actually the car driver is an independent company, effectively. And that's where we're going to with tours. That's where we're going to go to, and we're going to get there. Some suppliers and tour operators are going to like it, and some are going to hate it. But that's where we're going to, and it requires a whole new level of technology. And by chopping the resources from the leading reservation systems, we are actually stopping those res systems being the instigators of that change, because they just won't have the resources to do it. So that's where we're heading to, is pain. That's for sure, if you're an operator.
What Alex has just described there, I've got a saying for that. It's you're basically becoming a franchise without any benefits of being a franchise as an operator.
And many tour operators, I don't know the number. I'd love to do some research on this. So I'll just go with the word many for the moment, but that's mainly because I don't actually have any research. Many operators are in this business because they are doing it as a lifestyle. They love talking and dealing with customers. They love being outside if they're doing bike tours or walking tours or whatever, and they just love that interaction. So to them, do they really care if it's in their brand or if someone else's brand? That, as long as they get paid and they're, paying their house mortgage and everything else, do they really care? Whereas you get some people who are much more sort of entrepreneurial and go, oh no, I'm gonna design my own product and I'm gonna run my own business in my own brand, I'm gonna do it my own way, I'm gonna do all my own marketing and all that kind of stuff, which is I think the category that you fall into, Pete. And I just don't know what percentage of the entire industry is the people who would be quite happy to be within a franchise kind of a setup, and those who want to do their own thing in their own way. I don't know.
I suspect that there's demographics at play in there. Older operators that have been about for a long time are going to fall into the I'm doing it my own way. But going forward with and there's new suppliers, new operators opening up all the time, younger, coming from a different, not like used to being on mobile constantly. And we're old enough to have travelled and done all this stuff before the internet existed and mobile phones existed. So they're probably much more suitable to running tours in that gig economy, which is basically what you're describing, is a gig economy suppliers. Where initially, in my opinion, it's only my opinion, that looks easy business because someone else is doing all the hard lifting for you and you're just doing the bit that you enjoy. There is no strategic thought there. Therefore, at any tweak of someone else's business, your business disappears overnight.
It's like all these Uber drivers who are doing okay now because all the VCs are subsidizing the payment of drivers versus, and also the subsidizing the cost to consumers. So of course, both sides think this is great. But the challenge now is, now that Uber's on the public market, is that you're not getting that subsidy becomes a little bit more obvious because everyone's accounts, all the accounts have to be public. And so the public markets aren't quite so keen to be subsidizing drivers and subsidizing consumers forever, because that is not how you make money. So I think there will have to be a big change coming to Uber. And that's exactly as you say, Pete. If tours start operating in the same way, change will happen outside of your control.
It's funny you mentioned this because one of our listeners actually on our Facebook group, which can be accessed at tourpreneur.com/Facebook, sent me a quick message because I said we were having this discussion, and they said, we feel the bigger threat in tours and activities is things like Get Your Guide originals. But what's your verdict on what Get Your Guide are doing in terms of branding their own tours?
The points Tao has outlined there, which is talking about the OTAs, which is obviously referring to Trip and Booking, his points refer to Get Your Guide as well, just from a different angle. The same points that apply to them all if you're as a supplier. The last question is saying, how do I know the OTA's strategy will change? Well, how does an operator know that Get Your Guide strategy won't change? To an operator, Get Your Guide, Booking, Expedia, Trip, they're all just big companies that are all much the same, trying to compete in a digital landscape. So I actually view people like Klook and Get Your Guide and ones who are at a strategic disadvantage to Booking and Trip because of the cost of the acquisition, I think they will become operators. I don't think they have an option but to become operators. They have the data, so they can pick 600 of the highest volume cities in the world, and then the 20% cream tours from each city, and in a very rapid period of time, we're talking months rather than years, become an operator. Now, whether that is by the gig economy, by branding other operators on the ground who do it for them, or whether they take the operations themselves, that will play out over time. But there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that Klook, Get Your Guide, and any other up-and-coming OTA who does not have the strategic advantage of flights and accommodation bookings as well will become operators. So you will be competing head-to-head with your distributor.
I think you're absolutely right, Pete, but your mutual exclusion wasn't quite accurate in that Airbnb is the third one of that list, who, when you as a tour guide operate an Airbnb experience, you're, at least originally when they launched it, the second iteration, you're meant to operate that tour as Airbnb branded. So it's Airbnb, Klook, and Get Your Guide, effectively the three largest companies, funded companies in the sector, who are taking the Get Your Guide Originals concept. Whatever you think about it, if just by the three largest funded companies in the sector believing that this is the future, it will become self-fulfilling. Get Your Guide Originals does not require existing technology companies and reservation systems. It uses Get Your Guide technology. So you don't, this was my sort of first 5-minute statement when I read this news, was like, okay, well, what they're trying to do is reduce the resources and lock in existing reservation system providers to do exactly what they're currently doing today, not have the ability to innovate, not have the ability to do much else, and lock them into some sort of ossified 2015 view of the world, while Get Your Guide Originals buys themselves another 24 months to go off and build Get Your Guide Originals. And then by the time everyone's realized what that means, there's no time to react. And the res systems will be like, oh yeah. You know, that's what it will be, because it takes 2 to 3 years to build anything. So you have to somehow build yourself that time.
On that point, though, there is a strategic advantage Airbnb's got over Get Your Guide and Klook. And this is about brand. And it's only hearsay because it's my experience. But I get customers from all the OTAs, or most of them, the ones I choose to work with. And I've also self-guided, me personally, out guiding clients with Airbnb. 100% of the clients I have guided for Airbnb know the Airbnb brand, and they're very positive about it. 100%. Absolutely off the scale brand awareness and positivity about it. I've got 100 customers in today in the businesses. If I go and ask them where they booked, and I've got people today for Get Your Guide and people for Trip, they don't know. They just know they booked somewhere on the internet. Oh, I found it on the internet. Often they go lead by product. Oh, I booked whitewater rafting on the internet. They lead by the product, not the company name. And that is a strategic advantage Airbnb has got, that Get Your Guide will really struggle to get that brand awareness in a marketplace that the average consumer purchases once every few years.
If you look at the founders of reservation systems, the majority of us were technology founders. So we were developers or very technically kind of aware of things. And if you look at the Airbnb founders, they were marketing guys. So Airbnb is the outcome of marketing founders, and reservation systems are the outcome of technology founders. And that's just how it is. So of course, Airbnb is going to have a better brand, and because that ultimately is more powerful, sadly. But speaking as a technologist, it's more important to have a good brand than have good technology.
But isn't it also, you have to book your accommodation first, and then you get the option to book the experiences? So again, it's like double whammy, like you're saying, Peter. You know, with Get Your Guide and Trip and various others, you're just going on to book. You know, you're Googling and booking your attraction or your activity. Whereas with Airbnb, you're booking where you're staying for 5 nights, and then you get offered those experiences.
Yeah, and what's happening, though, with Airbnb, if I'm reading it correctly, is once people have booked experiences with them, most people don't know they do experiences. You've got to mind, we're in the industry and we pay attention to this stuff. The consumers don't know they do experiences. But once they're offered one, once they've done one, again, I ask the question to every single client I've had for Airbnb, would you book again? The answer, 100%, yes, because it was simple. It's not because of the quality of the experience. My God, they were with me for a day. That's not quality, that's pain. Therefore, it is the ease of booking. They like it and they trust the brand. Therefore, the retention of these customers will be higher than the retention of a customer dropping into an app or a web environment called Get Your Guide, because, yes, $500 million is a lot of money, but building a brand in the consumer brain at scale takes more than $500 million.
I mean, ease of use was such a fundamental part of why many reservation systems are tricky and why many reservation systems have not won the entire market. I mean, if you look at FareHarbor, for example, they are a very nicely designed platform for certain kinds of customers. And it just so happens that there's tens of thousands of suppliers who are exactly that kind of company. Whereas you look at my business, our business, Tour CMS, we had sort of a hodgepodge of all sorts of different kinds of suppliers. So you end up building features for different kinds of companies, in which case your usability suffers because you've ended up addressing too broad a part of the tours and activities market. Ease of use is a really fascinating debate. When you get to tours and activities technology, you can have ease of use, but then you can't address the entire market. And as we know, the entire market for tours and activities is very broad. We can't even work out what the name is, but perhaps we won't have that debate today.
Oh, it's called sightseeing and experiences, isn't it?
Sightseeing and experiences, absolutely. That's what we call it now.
But the more important ease of use is ease of use for the consumer. The customer ease of use wins What we do in the background is, and we obviously overcomplicate it 50 times 51. But from the consumer, it's ease of use wins every time. And that's where Airbnb are playing a long game. I'm sure they're losing a lot of money on it at the moment, but over the long game, they will make a strategic impact in the sector for sure.
We're in the bubble, right? We talked about this before. So when I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, I booked 2 attractions, one using the Get Your Guide app, the other one using tickets. They were exactly the same. The price was the same. They were seamless. It was smooth. So there was no advantage to using one over the other. But again, we work in this space. When you speak to 100 people, where did you book? I mean, that intelligence is gold.
No, for sure. And suppliers, operators have that ability to do that. Unfortunately, not many at scale actually do it, but that is the real data. And this is let's be honest here, although there's 180 billion or whatever the money is floating about this sector, this ain't easy. What these guys are trying to do at scale is not easy. It's a lot more difficult than they've done in other sectors before. And it's going to cost them a lot more money to do it because they're dealing with such a fragmented, different, stubborn, awkward client base, which is the suppliers. And it's nothing to do with the customers. The suppliers are just so fragmented, often so small, one person and his dog, that they just can't work with these platforms at scale. So although there's going to be growth and although there's going to be lots of strategic shakeouts and acquisitions, merges, companies gone bust, which I'm convinced is going to happen, it's still not going to be as rosy as quickly as I think some of the money is betting on.
And I think it's important for tourpreneurs to know that just because they're working with Rezdy or they work with BookingKit, it doesn't necessarily mean, as far as I understand, that Get Your Guide will pick your tour and promote your tour on their platform. There's no guarantee of that because you've often said, particularly at Arrival, Peter, that these OTAs, they need to make money, now more than ever. So they're looking at, okay, what's going to sell on the site? Is that, music walking tour of Greenwich Village going to bring in serious revenue, or is it the Statue of Liberty tour? I think we all know the answer to that. And I think that's something entrepreneurs should be aware of. I
can't see any of the OTAs alienating a large piece of their supply base by giving preference over one to another. It just doesn't make commercial sense to do that alienation because then you're segmenting the market that...
Well, Get Your Guide have said that they are going to do that. So we need to be, we can just literally read on the Get Your Guide's website and it says they are going to do this. So it says...
I didn't read their website. Does it say they're going to prioritize?
Prioritization in your mind, I believe, is like, do I rank this opportunity or this experience ahead of that experience? But what they've said on getconnected.getyourguide.com is we work closely with these partners, referring to Rezdy and BookingKit, to develop new features to solve industry pain points and improve connectivity quality. So what they've said is you are going to get different features if you are on those 2 res systems than if you're not on those res. Now, that is prioritization.
Yeah. It also says, in fact, on the same page, exclusive pricing packages for the preferred partners, which includes priority tech support and innovative solutions dedicated to Get Your Guide.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Although, to give Tao Tao his due, he does write in the article, we will continue to support connectivity for all systems. So I don't think they're going to start pulling the plug yet. But you're right. It's reading this particular website, first time seeing it today, this page, it does look like there's prioritization.
It's very subtle. Yeah. It will be very subtle. And of course, most suppliers don't know how other reservation systems work. I mean, I as a CEO of a res system never spent any time looking at any of my competitors. I just didn't have time to do that. I was just listening to customers. But the customers never knew what other res systems had either. So it was fundamentally, if someone introduces a feature, the only time you really get to find out about it is I would read a lot of people's support help desks, because quite often people had public support help desks, and that's how you would find out what other companies' features were that were attracting all of the attention. And so here there will be features. It could just be that one feature that you as a company could go, oh, you know what, our tour is going to love that. It's going to really work with us. And it might just give you that extra little kick that you need in order to get yourself more bookings, etc.
before we wrap this up, there's a message that Olan O'Sullivan, CEO at Treksoft, posted on my LinkedIn today where he says, loss of independence, so prefers another tour with chunky discounts. The suppliers, operators need to think about what Peter Syme pointed to in the comment below. Commission rates are squeezing margins, which will squeeze you and your reservation system. Time to think about revenue management. So going to be interesting to see what the other res system companies are going to be saying on this. Gentlemen, thank you very much for jumping on a call at such quick notice. I would love to have regular panels every month where we can pick a few topics and chew over the fat, because I know our listeners really enjoy, particularly your insights, especially you, Alex, coming from the res side, and obviously Peter, outspoken, knows his way around the tour world as a guide himself and as a tourpreneur. Would love to invite you back on the show to discuss some other important subjects.
Good to have you. It's good to speak.
Great. Lovely to be here.
Never miss an episode of the show. Subscribe at tourpreneur.com/subscribe.
And a big thank you to Peter Syme and Alex Bainbridge for coming on the show today. I gave them less than 60 minutes notice that we wanted to do this because I wanted to get this episode out ASAP to continue the discussion. Let us know what you think about some of the topics discussed today. You can find us at tourpreneur.com/Facebook. That will take you to our group. Think of our group as a bit like the bonus DVD extras. When you hear a show, that's where I want us to be able to discuss some subjects and topics that come up on the show. If you don't use it, then don't use Facebook, then we are on Twitter and LinkedIn, and I share on there as well. So that's tourpreneur.com/panel1. And don't forget to check out the brief. If you missed this story from Tao today, brief readers didn't. So that's an email I send out every single weekday where I curate all the major news in tours and activities. So until next time, cheerio.
Thanks for listening to the Tourpreneur podcast. Be sure to visit tourpreneur.com to join the conversation and access the show notes, including links to the resources mentioned on today's episode. This is Tourpreneur.